Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and welcome to my astrology channel. On this video, I'm going to be looking at the month of November 2020 for Pisces. Now, the first thing I want to say before I get into it is that this isn't astrology for sissies. This is real astrology. We don't blame our stars. Things happen to us and we can put the astrological signature on them, but it's what we do about them that's important. So what I do here really is put a shape to things to come, but then put you in the driver's seat in the sense that you know what that is and you have the right mindset. And what I'm also going to do is we're going to be looking at how the planets look in the circle so that you can sort of see what I'm talking about. And of course, that serves as a great reminder to me, so I know what I'm talking about. So let's get going on November, which does indeed promise to be not exactly a rock and roll month, but certainly things are happening in November, and they're happening towards the end of November in particular for you. So here we are. Here we have the picture of the cosmos, so to speak. And Pisces is at the beginning of the circle, because here is where the first house is, how, we judge everything from Pisces' point of view. All these planets all around us are judged from your perspective. So the thing I'm going to be placing a lot of attention to is here. I'm going to be talking about Neptune, which is your ruling planet, and why it's so important on or near the 29th of this month. And I'm also going to be talking about this penumbral lunar eclipse, which also has a big effect on Pisces. Again, I'll mention some birth dates here where it's especially important to. But I am going to start at the beginning. And the beginning, of course, is the 1st of November. And on the 1st of November, Mercury, which is this little symbol here, is hooking up to Saturn, which is over here in Capricorn. Now, when we put Mercury and Saturn together, we get a very serious kind of mix. Things are not light and bubbly and joyful and easy. They're rather somber. And of course, that means events out in the world will tend to be a little somber. Everybody's looking through a glass darkly, but it means we do too. So what you have to do is remember to be realistic and not negative. Now, what's interesting about these two is that we've got the area of finance, one of the areas of finance. In fact, it's shared finances. It's about the finances you share with your significant other, or if you're in business with someone. And it's also things to do with banks and lending institutions and credit card companies, those kind of finances. So maybe this Mercury-Saturn aspect is to do with getting finances in order, but it may also be that things look a little less than rosy financially at the beginning of the month. But hey, just wait a minute. On the 3rd, Mercury turns direct, which means it starts to move in the right direction. It isn't an overnight process. There isn't something magical that happens on the 3rd, and certainly everything that was wrong turns to rights. But it is from that point that you start to get more clarity and the things start to move forward in a way you might expect. But on Friday, Mercury hooks up to Saturn. Again, it's repeating its path. And so that may say there's a relationship between these two times, and maybe what seems so difficult and negative and gray on Monday now has some practical application to it, and you can get things moving. One of the things I would say when I link these areas, the 11th house has to do with enterprise, collaborations, friendships, group kind of events. And one thing I would say, if we've got a tie-up between money and enterprise, money and group events, it would be to learn the message here that we have to be careful who we share monies with. We need to be sure that those people are trustworthy and that they'll pay us back or they'll play fair. And that might be for a lot of Pisceans, this kind of issue that's going on in that first week of November. Now, another really important factor here, and remember I pointed to this eclipse, so you can see this is the moon, but you'd also see that I put the moon here about 4 times in the whole mix. And that's because every time the moon is in a certain sign, it forges a very powerful angle to Mercury and Uranus here, Uranus being the little television aerial that you can see here. And that means that throughout the months, there's a bit of a theme playing, and it has to do with Uranus, the awakener. And I love the use of that idea. You know, Uranus awakens us to things. Sometimes it awakens us to our own feelings, or our eyes are suddenly open about a situation. But sometimes it isn't something that happens in us, it happens because of an event. So then an event opens our eyes for us. So particularly, you have to think of this, and you have to think of it around the 7th and around the 14th, around the 17th, the 20th, and the 27th. And that's because Uranus is in a center stage, and his role as the awakener is very present. But also, I think Uranus changes things. So you must be aware throughout the month that maybe there's a lot of things you have to change at the last minute. And just being able to adapt to it without agonizing about it or thinking too deeply into it, but just getting on with it is going to be an important aspect of success, if you like, for the month. Now, the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction is another important moment, and that occurs on the 12th of November. For you, again, we're back into the area of enterprise and collaboration. So this would be a wonderful moment to begin a collaboration, to begin a really big project that has more than one person involved in it. The one thing I would say about Jupiter and Pluto, and I've said this to every sign of the zodiac, because it's a common theme, Jupiter, Pluto is a boom bust influence. So just as much as things can really boom in a way that makes you feel how great things are taking off, this is fabulous, it's also bust. You may have to cut your losses because things are getting out of control. So that is something else you need to bear in mind. Remember, the emphasis on my kind of astrology is that we're looking at the shape of things to come. And it's up to each one of us individually, every single Pisces, to bear that in mind and adapt accordingly to the days as we go through November. Now, I also want to look at here, I want to come a little bit more towards the end of the month, and why I pointed out the reason Neptune was so important. Neptune is your ruling planet, and it is the reason that you are perhaps the most spiritual and intuitive and psychic and creative and artistic and nurturing in the sense of helping and healing. That's why those are your strengths. But Neptune on its, the underbelly, as I sometimes say, can be a very tricky customer, and sometimes what you see isn't the reality. Sometimes the voice of our hopes and fears is a lot stronger than what's really in front of us. And this must always be borne in mind if you have a strong Neptune influence. And really this year, and certainly this month, we're going to be talking about the 8th to 11th, 12th March Pisceans. Now, of course, you may have Neptune somewhere else in your horoscope, and we're looking, and not Neptune, you may have planets at around 20 degrees or so of Pisces, which means that Neptune is focusing there. And so this is just as applicable to you. Sometimes we really lose our sense of direction with a strong Neptune transit. Things slip between our fingers. We just feel we can't rely on people. We can't even rely on our own judgment. But what's really happening is when you've got Neptune very strong in the astrology is that you're in transition. You're being taken, if you like, or guided to a new place. And really your hands can't be on the steering wheel. You have to trust the universe a little bit. Doesn't mean you abdicate responsibility. No, not at all. But it means that if something really can't be moved one way or the other, and things are very anxiety making for you, you just simply have to trust the process. Do what you can. And, you know, coming back to Saturn's position here as well, and what I talked about at the beginning of the month, about it being a little gray and somber. Often, you know, when we're facing something that's challenging and difficult, it really affects our feelings, and it's difficult to perhaps do things that we should do, But I think if you can say to yourself, is there one practical step I can do at this time? Then take that practical step, because it helps sort of move the system a bit forward. So why Neptune is important here is that on the 29th of the month, it turns direct. It has been retrograding for quite a while. In fact, since June the 23rd, it's been on a backwards roll. And so now it turns direct. It's got some information and some changes to bring you. Now, these aren't going to happen instantly on the day, but because there's a lunar eclipse the following day, it could perhaps be fairly soon thereafter, around that period. And I'll come on to the eclipse in a minute. When Neptune has been retrograding, it has been changing its nature slightly and subtly. I liken this to seasoning and marinating food. You know, when you do that, it changes the flavor of the food. And this is what happens when Neptune is retrograding, is changing subtly the essence of Neptune. And so certain situations are now going to develop and evolve in a slightly different way. And again, because you've got this heads up from me, you'll be super aware of this. You won't be going blindly at things. You'll take a second to think, is this what I'm getting here? Is this that change, that nuance, that alteration subtly of a situation? You'll pay more attention to it. So last, but certainly not least, we're going to look at this penumbral lunar eclipse. Don't worry too much about the name penumbral. We tend to pay more importance to total eclipses, but you know something, in my long experience as an astrologer, I think any eclipse is a powerful thing. It's a game changer, as I often say. And here again, we get linked back to a certain period of time. We get linked back to the lunar eclipse of the 22nd of May, somewhere around there. And at that time, actually maybe a little later, maybe it's the 23rd, coming to the end of May. And the reason why that's important is because things were reversed, you know, at that particular point. The sun was in Gemini and the moon was in Sagittarius. So we've got a kind of bookend here. And you may be able to think back again to that late May period and think, oh, that's when I met so-and-so. That's when that offer came through. Oh, that's when that event happened. And what you're looking at now at the 30th of November is this kind of denouement, this fulfillment, this sense that these two time periods are linked. And even if there isn't a beginning and an end here, there is a period of what I call reassessment. And so certain things that happened or were alive and well and very much in the arena in that late May period come up now again for assessment. But given that Neptune turns direct the day before, and we've got this lunar eclipse on the 30th, I think this period of the month could be very important in terms of your life direction here, something to do with your career or where you want to go in life, and also your home base. There could be some big changes forecast here, especially, I think, if you're born sort of towards the end of February, that kind of period of the year. So that sort of ends my November forecast. I'm going to come back and share myself with you now, and hope that you found that sort of helpful. It might be a good idea to list some of those dates so that you can remind yourself, oh, that's when she said that. And of course, you've always got my weekly forecasts on my website and my twice monthly videos in which I talk about the general picture at the moment, which is another way of getting a real heads up on what we're up against. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to being here again next month, December. Bye for now.